Hello, hi, welcome to another
Hi.
Inspiral Wellbeing series. And as you know, you're probably sick of us explaining this now if you've watched them all, but these are a free set of tools that we're putting online because we can't meet physically. And they're really people that are either friends of Inspiral or people that were lined up to come and speak at Inspiral. And we're really hoping that you will be able to get something from this, something inspirational, something challenging, something for you to think about, or just had to have a little bit of a passing the time, I suppose. So, no, something deep and meaningful.
Get on with it.
Get on with it. So today we are very pleased to have someone that actually is more than a friend of Inspiral, and almost a family member of Inspiral, I would say. A spiritual teacher with over 30 years experience in numerology, tarot, mystic arts, author of, I think, 10 books. Yeah. He runs workshops, which we know very well because we have Richard in our house running workshops, and also at Inspiral. He's helped thousands of clients. And we're really, really pleased to be able to welcome today primarily numerologist, Richard Abbot. So, hello, how are you doing?
Hello,
nice. How are you doing?
Nice to see you. Yeah, I'm great. Are you good? Are you doing well?
We're good. We're
Excellent.
locked in the loft at the moment.
Yes, and very pleasant to books as well.
It's quite tropical, isn't it?
It is tropical. Sorry,
So,
it's
yeah.
tropical.
So Richard, we're really thinking today we wanted to try and give people who perhaps don't know much about numerology or some of the things that you do, a very sort of broad overview of things, and maybe get people interested in thinking about how numerology can be significant in their own lives.
Yeah, absolutely, and how it can actually aid your life. I just have to interject here. We went to Richard as a pre-nuptial kind of counselling session, and sorry, he hates air quotes. Sorry. And I actually said to Matt, right, before we get married, we don't need a counselling session, but we need a session with Richard Abbot. And he was like, right, okay. And we came along, and it was like having counselling through numerology. It was amazing. And I have to say, Richard, you were spot on.
Yeah, it was really good. Really, really good, actually. And I genuinely mean that, in that we took the messages away and used them in a practical, tangible way in all aspects of that wedding, but also as we went forward as a married couple. So,
and after it as well, because there was one thing that Richard told us that would happen. And this came in and we were like, oh, who is it going to be? Who's it going to be? And we never guessed. We didn't guess the person that it was about. But it was spot on. And actually, your prediction through numerology really helped us to get through that slightly challenging time. So thank you.
Anyway, no, that's good. Sorry, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, actually, because it actually ties in quite nicely with what I was going to ask you, was because it was advice in our lives when we most needed it. And I can recall when you came to Inspiral once, you were going through and finding out people's life number, and someone had it and they were looking at the qualities of that life number. And I remember someone at Inspiral put their hand up, Richard, this doesn't describe me. These aren't my qualities. And I remember you saying, it's not really meant to describe you. It's meant to advise you. And I was thinking that, is it correct to say that numerology is really a set of guidelines that you should live your life by?
So it's really, perhaps a way of describing it is that it's a blueprint. Right. Numerology gives you a clue as to what your blueprint is, what your assembly instructions were. You know, this is how it's meant to go together. Numerology tells us. And of course, we have free will, so we can choose not to assemble ourselves like that. But always, in my experience, when you fit to the blueprint that your numbers give you, well, actually, everything just gets better and better. Everything goes smoother. I mean, that's what you might call alignment, when you're fitting to your blueprint.
Right. Okay. So really, it's a set of qualities that, you can ascribe to live your best life.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. a layout to live your best life. I mean, some people say that numerology is character analysis or personality analysis, and it kind of is on a superficial level. I mean, it is. It does tell you, you know, you're this number, therefore you're more likely to react in this way to something. Yeah. But there's a deeper level to it, and the deeper level is that it gets you at your at what your programming was, if you like, your soul programming, not your earthbound programming.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, of course, numerology has been with us for literally thousands of years, and I think, you know, people talk about the roots going back to sort of Pythagoras and people like that, who were sort of very early astronomers looking at the stars and trying to align how their lives, how that tiny part could fit in with all of this grand thing in the cosmos, which is quite interesting. And cultural references now to numerology are everywhere, aren't they? You know, we had all the business around 2012 and the Mayan calendar and things like that, which was really interesting. And you know, and this is perhaps, you know, a little bit too highbrow for this conversation, but it's also in Harry Potter, which there's a subject called arithmancy for the Harry Potter fans out there, which is essentially the magic of numbers. And if you freeze frame the video, which I haven't done, but you know, if you do, then you can see that there's all of the qualities that they ascribe to in that lesson are actually numerology. And we were thinking, we talked about this earlier, weren't we, about numerology, and given those references and how people are thinking now, and perhaps I think the latest statistics are around 45% of the population here in the UK don't believe in religion, or agnostic, or you know, there's not an actual religion. And that's a lot. There's an awful lot. And do you think that mainstream now is adopting concepts like numerology because of those cultural representations?
Well, so to me, numerology is the future, but it's also the past, and it's cross-cultural. So Islam, or I mean, technically the Sufi branch of Islam, not mainstream Islam, but the Sufi branch of Islam is very deeply enmeshed in numerology. Arithmancy, magical squares, this kind of thing used for healing, etc., etc. Hinduism, you go back into the roots of Hinduism, there's a lot of numerology there. You mentioned, so ancient Greece is where Western numerology was really born. Pythagoras and all those kind of people. So it's been around forever. It was used in ancient Greece, it was used in ancient Rome, it's been used through the centuries. And then we come up to date now. You've only got to search for 5 minutes on Facebook or Instagram or something like that, and there's somebody making some numerological reference to something or other. So, I mean, you can go down the rabbit hole with this quite easily, actually, and I wouldn't recommend that. But numerology has been here forever, and I don't think it ever went away, and it will be an increasing part of our future. I've got no doubt about it, along with other spiritual, not religious practices.
Yeah, science really is becoming the sort of forefront of the way of thinking, and I suppose if you think about leading scientists of our era, people like Stephen Hawking, people who are very good with numbers, mathematicians, they've got an inherent not understanding, but perhaps because of their relationship with numbers, they're able to think a bit more creatively and bigger. Stephen Hawking talking about things like black holes, you know, talking about the concept of being able to squeeze time in that way. These are really big concepts, and they all stem back to numbers and maths. Do you think mathematicians have a sort of more inherent understanding of numerology?
Well, I think mathematicians and physicists and people who use like super advanced genius level maths, I think they're doing numerology without knowing that they're doing numerology. Now, I appreciate that some of them might argue with that, but what is numerology? Numerology says that numbers have a meaning, and it isn't just 2 + 2 = 4, end of story. It's that 2 means something and 4 means something. It doesn't just mean there's 4 things. It means there's a quality to it. And a lot of mathematics at the advanced level deals with that. It recognizes that there's a branch of maths called number theory, which is basically numerology. There's another branch of higher maths called group theory, which is basically numerology via geometric shapes, symmetries. Quantum physics. Quantum physics is actually very interesting. We won't go too far down this, but the core of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, is based on very small numbers, which is an unusual thing for science and maths, who normally deal with very big numbers. But all of quantum mechanics is about really, really small numbers, 1 and 3 and 5, and that's the core of quantum physics. And of course, we're seeing now that quantum physics is beginning to explain a lot about our world and a lot about spirituality.
Oh, it absolutely is. I think I sent you a link once, didn't I, to do with biocentrism, which is
you did,
all about quantum mechanics and looking at the micro and wondering whether or not that science of the micro might actually be able to be upskilled, upgraded, whatever you want to call it, but being able to be used in the macro, which is a
absolutely
really interesting concept. And I'd encourage anybody, actually, because I'm very boring about this, as Christian will tell you, but I'd encourage anybody to read that biocentrism book. Which is great. Changed my sort of worldview.
But you're quite right. But just as numerology, to me, numerology is the future and it's also the past. Numerology is the big and it's the small. So in other words, you can talk really abstractly and conceptually about the universe and life and existence and God and everything using numerology, but you can also say, what's the best day for me to apply for a job? What's the best day for me to start a new fitness regime? What's the best person to go out on a date with? So it's massive things and it's everyday things.
Yeah.
Really important that it's both of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'm more on the everyday.
We're all about the everyday here.
So actually, we balance each other out.
Yeah. We're not totally doing this. Is what Richard told us at our appointment.
Yeah, leave me to the everyday.
I suppose I think about what you were just saying then and thinking, great, numerology is a science. It can do those macro things. It's also concerned with the micro, as you said. It can tell us things. It can predict things like 2020. I've heard you talking about 2020. I've heard you saying that it's a very big year. In itself, I think, is a 22. Even I can do that sort of basic kind of taking those 2 zeros out, which is a power number.
Yeah, when I met Matt just over 10 years ago, he always, in the end, we were like, yeah, yawn fest, let's get to 2020. He had a thing about 2020. So every year, closer to 20, well, just wait for 2020. Well, what's going to happen in 2020? Don't tell us we've got to wait for 2020. What's happening? And you're like, I don't know, but it's going to be really big.
I was actually hoping big in a good way, but
hey.
Well, it may in due course be big in a good way, when everything's bedded in and we see where we land up, it may.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I got sick of saying it really in kind of 2018, 2019. I got sick of saying how big 2020 was going to be.
Yeah.
Could you
have predicted something like this, the lockdown, the COVID?
Does it go that specific? Because I often get the feeling that numerology can tell us when an energy is going to be disrupted. But
you see,
be that specific.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. It can, but you see, my attitude to this is that it's actually this might be slightly controversial, but I don't actually think that Corona, the thing, is the disruptor. I think the reaction to Corona is the disruptor.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And I think, therefore, so the prediction was always, one of the many predictions was always that essentially after 2020, life is not recognizable to pre-2020. Now, let's just keep positive with that, because that might be a positive thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But so it was never the thing that I was interested in. It was the It was the reactions to the thing and how the reactions were going to be embedded and how they were going to cause the change. And I think that's how it's going to play out. It's not the individual incidents that are important. It's the things that flow from the incidents.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that makes total sense. Yeah. And I suppose in a way it's like anything in life, you have to go through these things to be able to learn from the journey.
Yeah.
And
the way out is the way through, as they used to say.
Oh, that's good. We'll put that on the website.
Well, that's not original to me, but as people used to say, the way out is the way through.
Okay. Well, it's still good. I suppose there's a lot of parallels, you may tell me otherwise, between numerology and astrology. I wonder if you feel that astrology in some way dilutes the science of numerology because of the connotations around astrology. You know, there's a lot of skepticism around it. I don't need to tell you that, and around. But whereas numerology, I think people's mindsets are very much kind of, actually, this is a science. There's something provable here. It's something tangible.
Yeah. So this is very difficult, and I don't want to be controversial, but I fear I might be. Astrology. I started off as an astrologer, so I know astrology. I started off in the days pre-computer astrology, so working out a chart by hand and all that business. That's how I started 30 years ago. And so astrology is a reality when it's done properly. Astrology works, and in fact, the 2020 phenomena, which we've been talking about, astrology very, very clearly highlights that. Very, very clearly says, in fact, almost to the day where lockdowns started to occur, there was I can't remember exactly, but there was a very big planetary setup, conjunction, arrangement, almost to the day. So astrology has got this. There's no doubt about it. However, I think the problem with astrology is that it is far more open to interpretation than numerology is. Numerology is obviously open to interpretation because all of things in life are open to interpretation. But there's less to interpret in numerology. It's much more a case in numerology of saying, here is the number, and this is what it means. Whereas in astrology, it's much more about, here is the planet, and here is this house, and here is the transit, and here is the conjunctions, and these intertwine, and you produce an interpretation out of all of that.
Right.
Whereas in numerology, you're really interpreting only one or two things at any one time. That makes sense. So astrology is wide open to interpretation, and therefore wide open to misinterpretation.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how much is numerology integrated into astrology then? Do numbers have specific significance for Leos or something like that?
So the joining point is that you can match up numbers to the planets. You can't really match numbers to signs, but you can match them to the planets, and that's where the overlap comes. And in fact, I know some people who do both, who are astrologers / numerologists, and actually it is quite a powerful combination. I won't lie. With numerology dealing with the kind of foundational structural stuff, and then astrology giving you like an open language to discuss things in. On top of that, so it can be a powerful combination, but they're not the same. They're not the same thing.
Okay.
And do you combine numerology with your tarot readings?
I do, and that's also a good combination. In fact, lots of people combine astrology with tarot. I think that's again open to interpretation, but numerology and tarot, that can be very powerful because all of the cards in the tarot are numbered. And if they're not numbered, they're part of a number sequence. So you can very easily go from tarot to numerology and back again, and that could be really powerful. That could be really, really insightful.
I'm booking a session in.
This sounds very good. Yeah, absolutely.
I need it.
Well, I think it'd be nice to sort of know that's really great. I think actually with all of that, I think hopefully people feel that there's quite an overview there of what numerology aims to do. why it's different from astrology and where it began and how it can be useful in everyday life, which is really great.
There's a lot more. Can I say there's a lot more on my website about this?
Yeah, we're going to put your website up.
We're going to put it there.
Okay, and there's a book. So this will seem like a shameless plug, and I suppose it is, but it is actually like relevant to what we're saying. On my website, I sell a book called The Secret Language of Numbers, which is a really super easy introduction to how to get your head around numerology. How to
Richard's gone to get it.
Sorry, that's the one.
It's the wrong way around.
Oh, the wrong way around. Sorry. Is that going to be the
super easy intro, like workbook style?
It's brilliant, and it's always updated, Richard. This has been in continuous publication for forever, hasn't it?
It's quite not forever, but quite a while. I mean, it's a good 10 or 12 years maybe since I did that, and it's been out there since then. I suppose I could update one or two things, but I wouldn't be changing a lot.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that's the nature of numerology, isn't it? I mean, it's there, and it's the numbers are there, and that's what they mean.
Indeed, that's the key to it. Yeah.
Yep. Well, you love numbers. Matt's actually in a band called The Numbers. So.
I did not know that. Excellent.
Very true.
Very good.
That's very true. Yeah.
So highly recommended. I use it all the
and
time.
we can get it through your website.
On the website, yes, on the website,
along with the other books that you've written.
Yeah, but that's the most accessible way into the subject.
Yeah. In fact, on your website, we noticed that let's go on the website and have a look, but it mentions that you liked talking to trees in California.
Well, I don't know whether I like
a nature lover here and somebody who talks to trees. I hadn't realised that you. Are you a tree hugger, Richard?
I am a little bit, yeah. I mean, it goes back to my kind of hippie raving roots, but I mean, I went to California, and I was in Northern California where the giant redwoods are.
Yeah.
And I was with a Californian at the time. We were wandering through the forest, and because I'd done this with trees in England so often, I didn't think twice about it. And I went up to one of these redwood trees, and I, if I'm truthful, perhaps I was trying to show off a bit, if I'm really being honest.
No, never.
But I went up to the tree, and I touched the tree. I think I did it with both hands actually, and it was just like, get off. Instantly, it was like, take your hands off. And the person I was with saw this going on, and she was like, "Do you not know to ask?"
Yes.
And of course, I did know to ask, but I'd forgotten in that moment. I was trying to be, trying to show what I don't know what I was doing, but it was so it was so clear though. It wasn't just a gentle, you stop, you should ask first. It was like a real, very, very, very powerful, super clear voice from the tree. Like, just respect me, man. Just what are you doing? Very powerful experience.
It really is. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's like
because
so ask first.
No, you ask first, but lots of people don't ask. And they'll get their penknife and they'll start carving their name on the tree, and you just think,
I mean, I would never.
Why would you do that? But yeah, always ask.
Always ask a tree first.
Yes.
It's good advice.
And
yes. Well, I think that actually brings us quite nicely into. We want to know a bit more about you, Richard. We've heard, we know what you do, and all of it's fantastic. But how did you come to this sort of understanding? I understand that it was from your website. The year was 1989. You were a younger man, of course, and you were you obviously found an affinity to the mystic arts in some way at that age. Was it sort of a just happened, or was this a gradual thing, building up, and how did that happen for you? Right.
So in hindsight, I now know that actually it's because I'd done this kind of thing before in a past life. Air quotes, sorry, past life.
Yeah,
sorry. I shouldn't really do that because it is like a real thing. So in hindsight, I now know why I had an affinity. I had an affinity and a knowledge of it, and a connection with it right from day one, which I remember now in hindsight. But the doorway to it in this life was a cultural thing. You talk about culture, and it was that rave culture, as it was called, the second summer of love, 88, 89.
That's right. Yeah.
That kind of acid house, rave music kind of thing. That was undoubtedly the door into this, because it was because suddenly I was allowed, in fact it was encouraged, it was part of the kind of scene of the time, to read tarot and talk about astrology and do this kind of stuff. So I would go to raves or parties or, you know, whatever, 88, 89, 90, and it was I was the dude who would sit in the corner doing tarot readings for people, and everybody was totally open to it, and even there was cultural references to it in a lot of the music of the time. So that was undoubtedly the doorway. Now there was a lot of downsides to that time, and there were downsides to that time, but really culturally, that's what enabled me and others, I think, to kind of flower into this world.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I feel you there, because I also know about that, a little bit about that scene. It seems like 100 years ago, but yes, I totally I can see that. It makes a lot of sense that would have sort of opened your mind, and other people's around you been more receptive to things like that, which is
it did. And it wasn't just important to know. I mean, it was, you know, there were substances, you know, substances were taken, but it wasn't that wasn't what it was about. It was about the fact that all types of people, it was about the fact that individuality was really encouraged, that all types of people would mix together and come together, and there would be no argy-bargy or conflict or oppression, repression. There was none of that. It was all together. And although afterwards I went off and I was very corporate through the early 90s, you know, in my youth, those ideas, they never left me. In fact, those ideas, I think, are still with me now. Those kind of like ethics of how to be, still with me.
Yeah, no,
absolutely. I mean, at the moment we're all talking about the oneness and coming together, but I think you said, you know, it's really important to have that aspect of we are all one. But I'm going to let you explain it, because you can put it into words much better than I can at the moment. But yeah.
Well, no, I mean, you were there. I mean, what that time taught me, and what I still think is the case now, is that you've got a situation in life where there is, it's what the ancient Greek numerologists used to call the one and the many. Right. So the one is the fact that we are all one, that we are, that there is no separation, that you are me and I am you, and if we could just embrace that that oneness, rather, cut the separation, embrace the oneness, then all things are possible. Then you have peace, then you have everybody's getting on well, everybody's healed, everything comes together, everything goes in the right direction when we are one. But oneness is not sameness. Well, at least oneness shouldn't be sameness. A lot of people actually think that oneness is sameness. They think that oneness and sameness are the same thing. It's not, which is why you've got to have this idea of the one and the many. So you go back to the rave days, everybody was dressed differently.
Yeah.
Everybody danced differently. It was encouraged to have your own individual style. So there was many, and the many were different. Everybody was different in the many. And it was okay. Everybody was cool with the fact that everybody was different. You'd go to a party. Some people would want to stay up. Some people would want to go to bed, and that was cool. There was no pressure to conform. So the many represents the fact that everybody's different. Everybody's unique. Everybody's an individual. If it's all about the one, then you land up with sameness. If it's all about the many, then you land up with division. You have to have the one and the many, like they had back in the day, or like they theorized back in the day in ancient Greek numerology. We're all different, we're all unique, but we're all part of this one thing. Yeah. If you can kind of hold both those ideas in your mind, I think that's the way to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really sort of challenging idea, I think, for some people, that you can balance that sort of individuality with this real feeling that you need to be part of this oneness.
Yes.
I think that's something definitely to take away from this, isn't it? As a sort of, as a concept.
It is challenging, but I get that it's challenging, but it's really interesting because it's not just me that thought it. The whole culture of those days of kind of 88, 89, 90, I'm not being wistful about the past. There were some difficult things, there's no doubt about it. But the whole ethos of that culture was simply what I've just described. And it was accepted without question. It was perfectly normal, and there was no challenging aspect to it. So it's only since that time where it's almost like we had something and we lost it in a way. And oneness, I mean, I'm all about the oneness, but if you're not careful, oneness becomes sameness.
Yes.
And that's not, it doesn't have to, but it easily can. It really easily can. And if you're just about the many, everybody's different, then everything just separates and splits apart. And I'm right, no, I'm right. It's got to be the one and the many.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. Well, I think, of course, 1989 also gave us Chesney Hawkes. So,
well, like I said, there were problems,
The uniqueness of Chesney Hawkes.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the uniqueness of it. Okay, so I'll be very. This is a very sad thing to say, but I was watching. I don't watch much telly, but I was watching Top of the Pops repeat on BBC Four. So BBC Four have been running Top of the Pops like every week forever.
Yeah.
And we're into August 1989 now. It was on the other night, so it's on iPlayer. And the diversity of music of that time is incredible. So let's go now to this heavy metal band.
Yes.
Now let's go to the one. So there was like Bon Jovi, the Wonder Stuff, and then some house music. The diversity was incredible.
You know what, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you don't get that as much now. We don't get it now, do you? But the Wonder Stuff as well, very good. Size of a Cow. It was one of my favourite records at the time. We'll talk a little bit about what you do now. You've obviously done workshops, and it's difficult in this environment, but let's say when we break free of the shackles of lockdown and everything, what sort of things do you offer in terms of one-to-ones? You're doing workshops. I mean, difficult to say what you've got coming up, because I'm sure, like us, you're kind of doing things online. But
have you got online workshops coming up, Richard?
Workshops, I haven't done a workshop for a little while. I may do one when we emerge from this, but I might wait till next year to see how we emerge from this. I do a lot of one-to-one work now.
Okay.
The technology is great because it enables me to do consultations and sessions with people all over the world, which is really what I do. Now, I'd say 50% of my people are not British.
Okay.
Live overseas. There's a great interest in all this stuff all over the world, really, in places that you'd never think were going to be interested.
Yeah. So you actually teach numerology as well. So if somebody comes to you and say, I want to learn to be a numerologist, can you mentor and teach them numerology as well?
Yeah, I have and I do. I have and I do that. I sometimes have done that in groups and classes, and I may do that again. So details would be on my website when that happens, if it happens.
Because you're also a lecturer at the College of Psychic Studies, aren't you? So.
Yeah, so that's where I've been doing the teaching, but obviously that's been kind of paused for the last 3 months, and indeed for a little while to come. I think that will not change there. So, but one-to-ones is what I do most of, really, now. So it's one-to-ones, which is a consultation, come reading, come kind of a bit of learning at the same time.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put all of your details
Absolutely
on this, on the
I'll be right there.
right there.
I'm writing a book. I'm writing another book.
Oh, fantastic!
Which I'm in the 7th draft of. Which is like yes, I'm nowhere near done. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we know a bit about that. Yeah.
We do, yeah.
Okay, well, now it's time for some deep and meaningful questions.
Well, absolutely.
It's really deep.
Deep and meaningful?
Yes, fence level, okay.
Oh, no. Sissons, Dimbleby, Frost,
Yes.
Madeley, all the real class.
All the greats.
Yeah.
Partridge.
Yeah, you're more Partridge.
And yes, indeed. And that's why we want to ask you what your lucky number is. It's actually quite important, Richard, isn't it?
I don't have one. That's such a bizarre thing.
Oh, gosh. What?
Lucky number, kind of.
I honestly, officially by the calculation, my lucky number is 3 because my life path number is 3 officially. But because I've been in the numbers game for so long, they've all got pluses and they've all got minuses. So I sometimes think, if I was a footballer, what shirt would I have? Actually, I wouldn't want a number on my shirt, because the moment you pick a number, you're in with the plus and the minus of that number.
Yes.
Oh, God,
okay.
you're no professional football for you, Richard.
Looks like it.
So what should we go with now? You do one.
I just did that
Oh,
one.
did you? Oh, yeah. No, I did it. I
Did
said
you?
I said favourite number, didn't I? Lucky number.
Favourite colour?
Favourite colour is red, if I'm honest.
Oh.
Oh.
Any rationale? You're just going to leave that hanging there? And,
Well, lots of people will, you can interpret that in all sorts of ways, but to me, it's a number of energy. So lots of other colours can inspire. I like blue, actually, if I'm truthful, but I do, if I'm saying my favourite, then it's red, because it always gives me a boost.
Isn't red lucky in China?
I think it is, yes.
So that could be entirely meaningless, but it's
Only if you're a member of the Chinese Communist Party, probably, but hey.
Yes, true. Yes, it's also a symbol of many other things. Okay, let's go with, there aren't many of these, Richard, don't worry, the pain won't last too long, but favourite childhood book?
God, I don't know.
It's a tough one, this, actually.
I'll be very sad here. So my parents were joined a book club for about a month, like people did in those days.
Britannia.
And we had an encyclopedia, which was called, I don't know what this means, but it was called a Larousse. I don't know what that means, but it was called a type of encyclopedia, I think. And basically, I read it cover to cover, so I'm a bit sad.
Wow.
Really? Okay. Well, that's actually, yeah. I think I remember my parents buying the Encyclopedia Britannica. A man came round and sort of convinced them that they had to spend £1,000 to the entire works. Sorry, Mum and Dad, for saying this, but yeah, and they were very good, actually, weren't they? But I mean, I couldn't have read them all, so they were obviously like 21.
Yeah, this Larousse thing was like a 1-volume thing about that thing, but I remember reading it, a lot.
Mm.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, a bit sad.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No, that's.
Okay. What did you eat for breakfast this morning?
I had gluten-free, wheat-free rye toast with marmalade.
Homemade marmalade?
No, it was shop marmalade, actually, but it was orange and tangerine flavour.
Right.
Sounds amazing.
I'm investigating the life-giving properties of marmalade. Apparently, people say that it is tremendously good for your well-being. I think that it's because it's loaded full of sugar that it gives you a fantastic sugar rush. So I'm not convinced that it's good for your well-being, but it certainly gives you a boost when you've had a slice of it in the morning.
Well, it certainly made Paddington happy, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, that's very true.
There you go.
Okay, let's do one more.
Last one. Sorry, Richard.
Last film you watched?
don't watch many films.
We can extend it to TV series or YouTube videos. You can't have your own. You can't have your own YouTube videos, Richard.
Yeah.
TV series I watched very recently. We watched Babylon Berlin.
Oh right, yes.
Babylon Berlin is a very interesting thing on Prime, or maybe it's on Netflix. We watched it on Prime, about 1920s Germany and how it was kind of crazy party atmosphere with brewing problems.
Okay.
I think I saw the
very
trailer.
good.
Yeah, it looked very good. Yeah.
We'll be
The
checking
first
it
series
out.
is better than the second and the third, or the second, whatever. But the first series is excellent, really very good.
Brilliant.
Okay. Well,
Thank you for an insight into Richard Abbot.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much, Richard. I
Yes.
think we covered a lot of ground there.
We did. We did.
So.
Well, Richard, we can't wait to have you back at Inspiral.
Absolutely.
It will be good to see you. I don't know when it will be, but it will be good to see you.
Yeah, probably be deep into the heart of 2021, perhaps.
Yeah, it'll be next year.
Realistically.
Easily.
2021, quick thought?
Depends how we get on in 2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good answer.
Yeah, good answer. Yeah.
2020 is as somebody called it, a choice point.
Yes, that we all have to move through.
Pivotal. Feels like that, doesn't it? Yeah, feels like that.
Yeah. So it depends. I think 2021 depends on the choices that are made in 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, thank you very much, Richard. We'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. And if people want to know more, and I know they will, the links and everything will be either down there or at the end of this video. So please, I would encourage you to go on and check Richard's stuff out.
And this is brilliant.
Thank you. And don't forget the one and the many. The one and the many is what it's all about in my view.
Yeah.
One and the many.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good
Thank
thought to
you.
leave with. All right, that's great. Thank you.
Thank
very
Nice to see you both.
Good. See you soon.
much.
Take care.
Thank
And you
you.
too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.